For a comic book character to get popular, they need to be charismatic, relatable, and entertaining. But even though these characters are known and respected, the creative teams behind them just can't do them justice. With that in mind, I'm Will for What Culture, and here are 10 popular comics characters nobody has done right. 10. Archangel. In his early days, founding X-Men member Warren Worthington III, aka Angel, was labeled as a Mary Sue. Even though X-Men like Nightcrawler, Wolverine, Cyclops, Jean Grey, and Beast have tons of insecurities, the winged mutant seemed unrealistically perfect, to the point where he came across as boring. Instead of making Warren's character a little darker, the creative team went to the other extreme and transformed him into the Horseman of Apocalypse, Death. Although he broke free of Apocalypse's influence, Warren, now calling himself Archangel, was left with a demonic look. Since his new appearance was a constant reminder of what Apocalypse put him through, he developed a relentless obsession with the malevolent Demagogue. Demagogu. Is that a word? Demagogu. Annoyingly, this change made Archangel more boring, since now all he talks about is how he's going to destroy the evil mutants. And what did Warren do when Apocalypse was finally killed? He was still obsessed about him. This does Angel a disservice when there's a lot of interesting aspects about the character. He's one of the world's richest mutants, led his own superhero squad, dated Psylocke, joined a secret Black Ops team, and once believed he was a real angel. He shouldn't be identified purely by his relationship with his dead arch-nemesis. 9. Calendar Man. Batman villain Julian Day, aka the Calendar Man, is so called because he commits crimes on significant dates like Christmas, Halloween, and St. Valentine's Day. For years, he was regarded as a silly and forgettable villain, which was all too common during the Silver Age. But in the 1996-1997 miniseries Batman the Long Halloween, Day was remodeled into a sinister serial killer. Regarded as a danger to society, Julian was incarcerated in Arkham Asylum and had become one of the few permanent residents of the facility. Even though this story helped Calendar Man become a more recognizable name, nothing was really done with the character since. When DC Comics rebooted under the New 52 banner, it was a perfect opportunity to revisit the character and make him more mainstream. Instead, he was turned into a comedic news anchor. When DC again relaunched several years later, Day was completely revised as a metahuman whose age is based on the seasons of the year. On the 31st of December of each year, he dies and is reborn in a new body the following day. This is an intriguing idea, but Julian Day is mostly absent since the relaunch, not giving the character a chance to be explored. 8. Cyclops. There's nobody on the X-Men who works harder than Scott Summers, aka Cyclops. Years of training has allowed the visor-wearing mutant to become a master tactician, a gifted fighter, and brilliant leader. Because he's strict and a stickler for rules, Scott regularly clashes with his more brash colleagues, especially Wolverine, which creates a lot of banter and conflict on the team. Even though he's often portrayed as the voice of reason, Cyclops has performed some immoral acts over the years, making him come across as utterly despicable. Most recently, he lost his mind after being possessed by the Phoenix and killed Professor X. Although Scott's actions were manipulated, he justified his actions after the cosmic entity left his body. The moral of the story is, if you want a superhero to come across as likable, don't make them justify murder. That's like Superhero 101. 7. Howard the Duck. Howard the Duck is a satirical Marvel character who regularly parodies conventional comic book stories. Since he's been a burlesque director, a wrestler, a video store clerk, a martial artist, and a wizard, it's clear Howard is not supposed to be taken seriously. Because he's so unconventional, this avian superhero rarely associates with Marvel's major players, and many of his stories aren't considered canon. Still, Marvel shouldn't be afraid to embrace the character. Weird characters like Rocket Raccoon and Groot prove that any superhero can work if they are incorporated into a story correctly. Other satirical heroes like Deadpool and Spider-Ham have recently become mainstream, so why is Howard not given a chance? He mightn't work alongside Thor or Iron Man, but he should fit in just fine with other eccentric heroes like the Guardians of the Galaxy, or even Doctor Strange. Speaking of which, Howard teamed up with the Sorcerer Supreme during the Empirical storyline a few years ago, and gelled really well with all the other characters. Since he's been around for decades, it's clear he has a devoted fanbase, so Marvel shouldn't be afraid to implement him into more significant storylines. 6. Starfire. Starfire is a teen titan who hails from the world of Tamaran. Because her people usually connect with each other through kissing rather than speech, Starfire is seen as an intimately sexual being by Earth standards. Due to this, it would have been so easy to make Starfire nothing more than a gratuitously carnal superheroine. However, the golden-skinned beauty is a well-developed character and has played an integral role in many iconic stories. However, when she was introduced in Red Hood and the Outlaws in 2011, most of her multi-layered characterization was thrown out of the window. Instead, she was turned into an underdressed nymphomaniac. Fortunately, Bobby Chase's 2015 Starfire series made the Teen Titan have more similarities with her original counterparts, but there was another problem. Although she wasn't hypersexualized, the alien princess was now depicted as a moron. Sure, she was always perceived as naive in her early appearances, but that's because she was unfamiliar with earthly customs, not because she was an idiot. 5. Wally West. Wally West debuted as Flash's partner, Kid Flash, back in 1960, only 4 years after the introduction of the second Flash, Barry Allen. When Barry died in the 1980s, Wally took on the mantle of the Scarlet Speedster. Even though he was originally perceived as a sidekick, it wasn't long before he was universally recognized as the official Flash. All that changed in 2008, when Barry returned in Final Crisis. Even though Barry could now reclaim his title as Flash, readers naturally assumed Wally West would still play a major role in the comics. After all, he was Flash's sidekick for 25 years. They weren't gonna just get rid of him, were they? Well, yes. That's exactly what happened. When the New 52 was launched, Wally was erased from history, so no one knew he ever existed. And when he was finally introduced in Rebirth, he was turned into a killer. And then just when you thought the writing team couldn't be any more random, West was turned into Dr. Manhattan. Considering the popularity of the character is at an all-time high thanks to the Flash TV series, you'd think the writers would be extra careful to get the character right. 4. Arsenal. Green Arrow's sidekick Roy Harper has had many adventures over the years, but he's best known for being the first superhero to reveal he's a drug addict. When he kicked the habit, it made him an inspirational character to many readers, especially those who suffered with substance abuse. Sadly, all of that was undone in Justice League: Cry for Justice. In this misaligned saga, Prometheus killed Roy's daughter, which left him so grief-stricken he started using again. He got so high, he mistook a dead cat for his child, which was so absurd and inappropriate that the character was almost destroyed in one single panel. When DC Comics rebooted in 2011, it was a golden opportunity to retcon certain negative aspects of his backstory. Unfortunately, the character was tweaked into a snarky, juvenile douchebag, making him very unlikable. When he was revised again during Rebirth, he was turned into a depressed and suicidal alcoholic. To the writer's credit, having the character depicted like this can work, as it shows that superheroes can suffer the worst possible vices. But since Roy acts ungrateful, petty, and childish to his friends as they try to help, it's pretty tough to root for the guy. 3. Mary Jane Watson. There are some characters who are so badly written, it makes them come across as irritating, selfish, or idiotic. But Peter Parker's love interest, Mary Jane Watson, is different. She's been written so poorly in so many stories, it's difficult to tell what her personality is. Is she a partying bad girl or a housewife? Is she an ass-kicking fighter or a damsel in distress? Does she support Peter's superheroics or does she want him to give up the mask? She often talks about how dangerous Peter's job is, and yet voluntarily torpedoes into danger as if she has a death wish. If she was a consistently badly written character, she'd come across as needy, whiny, and inconsiderate. But because her character fluctuates so often, it's like MJ suffers from a mood disorder. This whole situation was made worse in the One More Day saga, which undid Peter and MJ's marriage, chucking out decades of continuity and changing her personality again overnight. Peter's other flame, Gwen Stacy, may have been considered a bit generic, but at least she was a consistent character. 2. Superboy Prime. Superboy Prime was a young Superman from another universe. When the Anti-Monitor tried to destroy the multiverse, Prime allied with heroes from parallel universes to stop him. Because of his heroism and altruism, Prime was perceived as a noble superhero and trusted ally of Superman. But after he learned his universe was obliterated during Infinite Crisis 20 years later, he suddenly turned into a murderous megalomaniac. Now, having a superhero becoming a villain isn't uncommon in comics. What makes Prime's heel turn so infuriating is he's so annoying as a bad guy. He whines, cries, and has tantrums so often, it's impossible to take him seriously. So not only did DC Comics ruin a character that was perceived as a hero for decades, they turned him into the most irritating supervillain imaginable. The character was somewhat redeemed in the recent Dark Knight's death metal story, where he seemingly sacrificed himself for the multiverse. It's just a shame that readers had to put up with Prime being so badly written for so many years. 1. Red Hood, Jason Todd. Long before Jason Todd donned the Red Hood title, he was Batman's second Robin. However, readers weren't won over by Todd's arrogance and immaturity, which led to the teenage sidekick being killed off by the Joker in the 4-part Batman: A Death in the Family. When the character was resurrected as Red Hood years later, he became an anti-hero that uses lethal force against criminals, believing Batman's no-kill rule was ineffective. Although Bats and Hood respect each other, their philosophies always put each other in conflict. Sadly, Todd is one of those characters who works perfectly perfectly in principle, but not in practice. Sometimes he respects Batman's rules, and sometimes he doesn't. It's like the creative team can't decide if he's a murderer or not. What's worse is this inconsistency makes Batman look incompetent and hypocritical. Batman disassociated from Stephanie Brown, Azrael, Huntress, and Wonder Woman when they used deadly force. But when Todd decapitated a bunch of criminals, shot the Penguin at point-blank range in the face, and killed the Joker, Batman made excuses for him. It's perfectly fine to make the Red Hood a vigilante who uses lethal force, but his character has to be consistent and not undermine Batman. And there you have it, folks. 10 popular comics characters no one has done right. Feel free to drop this video a like if you enjoyed it, and drop me a follow on Twitter at YouSlyDowU. I'm Will for What Culture, thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you next time.